Hey, welcome in to a bowl preview, our first bowl Rice football blue and gray preview show that we've done together yet, JP. Thank you, as always, for helping me steer this trip. And first off, it's nice to talk to you in December.
Yeah, was that the end of the practice I went to last week because of the weird scheduling and the team departure? And with basketball, it's been a pretty hectic couple weeks, but we're glad to have that hecticness. That's a word. But I think I turned to you as like, hey, this is a different feeling. And it was like a 74-degree Houston day, which isn't too surprising.
It
But
was so nasty.
yeah, so I'm all for it. I like these December games. Let's make a habit of this, okay?
Yeah, I'm all for it. I was chatting with Trey Schumann after practice on Monday. Gosh, they all fly together. He said, I've never really gotten to play in December, and this is really cool. He said, well, except for the COVID year, that sucked. It's like, okay, regular December, and we're in regular December, and we got a bowl game to preview versus checks notes, a team that we've previewed for a long time, not a new face. General reaction when you heard Southern Miss was the Owls' opponent in the Lending Tree Bowl.
Had that same question from my radio friends over in Mississippi, and I was really pleased. One, you look at it from the historical matchup. You played them umpteen times in a row, so I was excited for that. And as far as location, it's close. I wasn't in too big of fan as we full disclosure off mic. We have a lot of these same conversations. Try to be as genuine. Wasn't looking forward to going to Detroit the day after Christmas or flying up there Christmas Day. And quite frankly, the Myrtle Beach can wait for another year or so. So I think it all came together nicely, and it's a matchup that Rice, I think, is, even though they're the underdog, quote unquote, the big skyscrapers in Vegas say, in the desert say, it's a very winnable game, and a lot of these similarities too. When you deep dive into it, like we're about to. Not necessarily style wise, but trends of the season. I guess that's expecting you have a 5-7 and a 6-6 team. So yeah, I was very excited overall to play the Golden Eagles.
Yeah, I was thrilled for one. This is a situation with Rice getting in at 5-7. They were kind of the last one. It's like, all right, you're going here. It wasn't like, oh, pick your favorite bowl to go to, Rice. So they very well could have been matched up with a underachieving Big Ten ACC team with a clear talent discrepancy, and said, all right, go try beat I don't even know. Michigan State didn't even get into the postseason, did they? But something like that, where the matchup probably would not be as representative as you would have hoped it would be. So getting Southern Miss, a team that, is on par with Rice in every way. This is going to be the 13th time they've matched up. They're 6-6 overall in the series. Rice has won the last two. They won last year, was 24-19, I believe was the final score. And the year before that was the Austin Trammell show in Hattiesburg, where he had umpteen touchdowns and 200 receiving yards and just smoked some people. They won 30-6 in that one. So this is how many teams does Rice have an active multi-game winning streak over? Like one. So you would like to add that to the list. And then two, this is an opponent that they're 6-6, Rice is 5-7. They got some problems. Like Rice has some problems. You would rather, obviously, you're not going to get paired up against, a 10-2 UTSA squad in a bowl game. But, these, like you said, it's a winnable game. The margin, I think, was 6.5 or 7 points, something like that, depending on where you look. And Rice has won a couple games as 2 touchdown underdogs this year. So for bowl season, it's a toss-up, and I kind of like that. And I kind of like that, it's Southern Miss. It's a team that Rice is very, very familiar with.
Yeah, 100%. And I keep coming back to the styles of it. They're each team really wants to run the football, and the team that turns the ball over more is going to lose the game. So there's your spoiler.
Breaking news.
Yeah, there's your keys to the game already, but stay tuned the last 25 minutes or so. But and I could see, I know my buddy John Cox, who's done his job at Southern Miss more than I've been alive. I'm going to remind that again when I talk to him this afternoon. But they're saying the same thing on the Southern Miss side, like, oh, it's great to play Rice in a bowl game. They hinted that in the radio show I did yesterday from some other folks in Mississippi. But it was like you just crystallized there, and both sides can look at this favorably. And regionally, you're going to be a lot of Southern Miss fans there, and it's close enough. Hopefully, a lot of Rice fans can scoot on over I-10 or fly on over with the private jets and whatnot for Rice folks. Should hopefully have a good crowd.
Yeah, and then like last kind of big picture thought I have is I also really like schematically the matchup with Southern Miss. If you look at Rice's schedule this year and kind of how their games went, you look at their game against UAB and UTEP, North Texas, Louisiana, the teams that were kind of committed, not kind of, were very committed to running the football and kind of playing physical defense. Rice was 3-4 in those games. That North Texas game literally came down to a fourth quarter where Rice had the lead. So if you look at the teams that wanted to drop back and throw it all over the yard, Western Kentucky, UTSA, Charlotte, Louisiana Tech, those were the teams that Rice struggled with this year. So selfishly, if I could pick a style of opponent for Rice in a bowl game, it would be someone like this who wants to try and win a game 24-20 instead of 44 to 20. So I think that sets up really well for Rice. And then, selfishly, as someone doing prep work, it's kind of nice that there are a lot of familiar faces, and the bowl prep for this team was not as expansive if we had to go and figure out, okay, who's playing offensive line for Miami, Ohio. Nice to have some familiar faces, at least, to do your work.
Yeah, 100%. And just the people behind the scenes, too. A lot of respect for the Southern Miss folks, getting to know them and all the sports I do. But, yeah, it's a friendly rivalry at that, and one that Rice, I think, don't do my pregame chat with Coach Bloomgren until right before the game, and then Nate filled in for me because I had a little basketball game Monday night. So I did not talk to Coach Bloomgren on his show, special bowl preview show we did. I can only imagine that they see a lot of things that they like in these matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. And we transition now to the matchups on the field, what it's going to look like. And it starts at quarterback because it always does. And I was chatting with Bloomgren this week, and he kind of joked that said, it's nice that it happens to people outside of us in the quarterback situation, right? Rice, of course, is now down to scout team quarterback. Well, former scout team quarterback, now starting quarterback, A.J. Padgett. And Southern Miss, hey, look, that's me, is going to be rolling out, we expect, Trey Lowe at quarterback, who is now making, his 12th career appearance, 6 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, his third start of the year. So it's kind of been hit or miss for them. And he's the guy under center. So we got to talk about him. But really, Southern Miss was going to want him to get the ball to Jason Brownlee and then not do too much in this game. Is that fair? I'm not writing him off, but I'm kind of putting the focus elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, from Lowe's perspective, he's an amazing athlete still, but the focus of their offense, not even just Brownlee's their top offensive threat, no doubt. I was looking back last year's notes, and I have that still on this year's boardy, but Brian Smith told me last year, and I'm sure it's still the same, that Brownlee really stands out. They didn't get him the ball a lot of times like they wanted to last year. They've done a better job, and whoever the quarterback's been for Southern Miss, at getting him the ball this year. But it's still Frank Gorst, the guy. He's the dude, and he'll play a lot of that Wildcat or whatever they call it in their lexicon. Just came off a career-high game, 199 yards. So a dollar gets 10 that Gore is going to be the central piece of running the football like he's been, for those that somehow don't know, his dad, Frank, one of the great NFL rushers in all-time history. And I remember old articles the past couple years when we had them on the regular schedule. Gore has that daddy's work ethic, and he's really talented. He's a third-year sophomore, and he's really stuck it through there. But a guy that has great vision, and he's 1,000-yard back. So you can be sure that he'll get the ball a lot here. But their offense still has, they average 24 points per game on the season, but they've only averaged 19 the last 4 games. Not throwing stones there, because the Owls lost their last 3 regular season games, and they finally started to get it a little bit going in the right direction before some drives stalled against North Texas. But they're 11th in the Sun Belt in yardage at 333 yards per game. But you can see they're not a huge passing team, 209 yards a game, but they try to get it rushing. They're just under the top 100 in rushing the football. So it comes down to Gore and, yes, Brownlee, but they've got some other big outside threats as well too.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I kind of did a quick informal survey talking to a couple players and coaches this week at Rice, tell me about Southern Miss. Just a vague, open-ended, wherever you want to go question. And, almost to a man, everyone said Franco Jr., Franco Jr., Franco Jr., Franco Jr. So, and it's funny because, Dwayne McBride at UAB is, headed to the league and is going to be an NFL running back next year and is incredibly talented. And I think back to, he's probably the most talented running back Rice has played yet this season. And I look back at the bowl prep or the game prep for UAB, and yeah, people talked about Dwayne McBride, but it wasn't the only thing that was brought up in conversations when I said, tell me about UAB. The defense was brought up and the offensive scheme and some of their playmakers on the outside, but it was all Frank Gore Jr. when asking about Southern Miss. And that is kind of heartening to me for one reason, if not because Rice held him in check last year. Didn't get in the end zone at all, didn't get 100 yards, was able to get some production on the ground, but he did not beat Rice. And that's going to be exactly the same recipe that defensive coordinator Brian Smith is going to pull up this year. Limit Frank Gore Jr., don't let him beat you. Southern Miss is going to try and build the whole dang plane out of Frank Gore Jr. And there were periods of time this year and last year where he kind of operated as the super back or whatever they call it. And it's not, calling it a wildcat package wouldn't be justice, because I think he had a game where he threw 2 or 3 touchdown passes and just can do everything. So it might not be too much of an overstatement to say if you can stop Frank Gore, you're probably going to be all right when it comes to the Southern Miss offense. Now, I say that tongue in cheek because, just stop Frank Gore. Like, it's going to be that simple, and it clearly won't. But I think that's the key piece on offense on that side of the ball. You mentioned a bunch of the stats. They're just not good. This is a team that is probably not going to score 30 points unless you give them some help, which Rice has done with turnovers and miscues. So, and Rice in a lot of their wins has crossed I think it was looking at 33, easy enough for me to say, 33-point mark, where 4 of their 5 wins this year, they've gotten 33 plus points. The only one they didn't was UAB, where they got 28, which is pretty good. So Rice can score when they get out of their own way, even on some better defenses, and Southern Miss is not going to put up a lot of points. So you got to think that that's kind of a broad brush look at how the two offenses compare. And then anything else on offenses before we flip over?
No, I like broad brushes. I don't mind broad brushes. When you look at, this is where I lean on you, Brother Bartlett, the top of the noggin, against North Texas, they didn't have a back that went wild, right? They had, I know, Ragsdale and
they cycled in like 2 or 3 guys.
That's right, because their top 2 guys, it was Ani who hit the big plays. But my point being that you mentioned McBride. I'm not showing it because it's just a quick nugget, but McBride had 121 yards against Rice's defense. So
and like 75 more that were called off by holding penalties.
Yes. Thank goodness.
If we're being honest.
Yeah. Still the high of the season, but McBride had 121. And the Owls against the run this year, they're fifth inside Conference USA and just a few pecks higher, better allow against the run for the run defense. So the Owls, on a whole, it hasn't been an issue. Let me rephrase it. Them not stopping the run hasn't been an issue in their losses this year. It's been being too friendly with the football and the poor times turnover. But when are they ever a good time for turnovers? But yeah, that's and on the Rice defensive side, I think having a full healthy allotment too, which we'll know more once we get to Mobile. The teams there, I am going out separate because I have the big basketball clash against North American, sarcasm intended. But I'll be there Friday and we'll know a little bit more. But all accounts, the defense seems to be pretty healthy for the Owls going into this. And then some Owls going out playing their last game, and you got a lot of juice on the Owls defense from some leaders. It's probably Akina Inachukwu's last game. I know this is more of a Southern Miss preview, but Trey Schumann's going to be playing with his football pads on fire. George Nyakwal, who has been my poster boy of being glad to see the Owls in a bowl game, strictly for guys like George Nyakwal, Trey Schumann, that have been Shea Baker, that have been through all the battles. So yeah, that I went off a little bit more than our other topic, but so yeah, sports.
Yeah, sports. I love it. If you will oblige me, one quick plug on that. Later coming up this week, we'll have some notes up on at theroost.com on our Patreon for subscribers. We'll have some notes on what Rice players are projecting to be healthy enough to play, or at least give it a go, and then kind of some interesting nuggets from practice this week. The practice reports are some of my favorite things to do. It kind of helps get an inside feel of what's going on in the program before we get to Saturday. And it is convenient that this game is still being played on a Saturday, so our normal schedules can kind of somewhat stay intact. But go there, patreon.com/@theroost. It's everywhere. You can find our practice notes. We have some recruiting stuff. We had 20 official visitors in this weekend and 6 commits, a couple of which haven't been announced yet. It's a good time for Rice football going to a bowl game. But back to the bowl game. And I want to talk about Southern Miss. I want to talk about their defense because they're a tough nut to crack when I kind of look down at it. Because if you look at the numbers, and I'm a numbers guy, right? This is a unit that allowed 23.5 points per game, top half, near the top of the Sun Belt. And that's pretty good, just all things considered. But then when you look at the yardage totals and the plays against them, Southern Miss allowing almost 370 yards per game. And then you look at the big plays, long scrimmage plays of 20 plus yards. They were 12th out of 14 teams in the Sun Belt, giving up 63 plays of 20 plus yards, those big chunk plays. So what they've done really well this year is they've kept their opponents out of the end zone, which is important, and you want to do that to win football games. But teams have been able to rack up yards and move the ball against Southern Miss. So this is a defense that I'm confident saying is good. I don't know how effective they will be if Rice can exploit them down the field and get some chunk plays. So with that said, a couple new faces, couple old faces that I feel like, Central Latham, you got to take him off your board at some point, right? I mean, he just pops up. He feels like he's been there forever. There's a couple guys. Who else on the defensive side of the ball do we need to be prepared for?
Well, 7 here jumps out when you look at the stats and remembering the name. Dominic Kawiwan, Minneapolis kid, leads them in sacks. They're really good behind the line of scrimmage defensively, forcing teams tackles for a loss, and he leads them. They're 3rd in the nation in tackles for a loss, over 100 on the year. But that's secondary. If I can have a 1A, they really fly to that football. And along with the sacks, to jump back to the first point, along with the TFLs, they get a lot of sacks. They're 6th in the nation in sacks. So I think it's fair to take off I mean, I guess understood. I'm gonna look at it with as always preference with you and Nate. My blue and gray contact lenses. Yes, I am in favor of Rice winning athletic events. This is a fact. But when you look at the strengths of their team, this could be a problem because their secondary is so good. Yes, they give up the yards, as you see, only eighth in the Sun Belt, but they're a good ball hawking team, and they're good knocking teams down behind the line of scrimmage. So I think the Owls' offensive line found some consistency towards the end of the regular season. It was kind of like the first 6, 7 games. It was almost like, okay, like what do we do now? And they found that cohesion. So we'll see how the Owls offensive line matches up with the Southern Miss defensive line, which is good at penetrating into the backfield. But mainly Quiwan, though, and obviously I spell it phonetically there to help me during the game. But Jay Stanley sticks out too. He leads them in picks, a free safety. They basically Southern Miss and Coach Hall, and they've got one of the youngest defensive coordinators in the nation, Austin Armstrong.
The youngest.
He is still the one. The verbiage was in my buddy Jack's notes. I didn't know if that was definite, but yeah, I knew he was up there. But they raided the portal cupboard of Lane Kiffin up the road in Oxford, and they got some really good talent. That's the big thing. They've got a couple Mississippi State transfers, but Brooks is not a slouch either. He'll probably get a lot of matchup against Rosner on the Owl side. Yeah, they can really pick it off and they can really get to you. So how does Padgett handle that pressure? And even if he's not getting hit, if he's thinking about that pressure, what does that do against a secondary that's proven that they can pick the ball? And I know I'm probably not breaking news to you or most folks watching this, but the Owls have been way too friendly with the football. Rice has led the nation in turnovers. And to me, Captain Obvious, that's not a good mix going against a team that can pick it off. They don't force a lot of fumbles, but they're great hitting you behind the line of scrimmage, which obviously could lead to some fumbles.
Yeah, and just in case, just to reiterate, that number was a little small on the side. There are 5 teams in the country that intercepted more passes than Southern Miss this year.
Mm-hmm.
5. That's not many. How many total FBS teams are we at? 131, I feel like right now.
Correct.
So that's a lot. And that's a big number of turnovers for Southern Miss. And at some point, we used to say, well, turnovers are fluky. Like sometimes it's luck. When you get that many, some of it's luck and some of it is just you just have a knack for it. And that's something that, we talked about earlier about a defense that gives up yards but not points. That's one of the ways that you do it is by taking the ball away in those key opportunities. So I think that's something Rice is going to have to be aware of because they're kind of stingy. They kind of got a bit of a swagger to them, and it's a bit deserved. So I think that's something that it's going to be interesting. I think this defense is going to be a good test for Rice, and I think they should be up for the challenge. We'll see how it goes, but if you just look at something interesting that I thought when I was pulling stuff together, if you look at the red zone, which is, ultimately all it comes down to when you're kind of pulling these stuff together, right in the middle pack, but about 50, or not about, exactly, I'll pull you a number, 57% touchdown rate in the red zone by Southern Miss opponents this year. And 57% is pretty good, all things considered, when you're punching from inside that 25. Rice, on the other hand, you pull them up, and they're allowing a 69% touchdown rate in the red zone on defense this year. So these are, Rice, we think about having a pretty good defense. They have not been able to hold inside the red zone. Southern Miss has. And you talk about a game that's supposed to be, at least projected to be, a one-possession game. The difference between getting that field goal from 20 yards out and that touchdown could be the game. So that's one thing I'm watching for. I think it's going to be interesting how these two teams stack up. And then, big picture, any other closing thoughts you have about Southern Miss, about how we might see a matchup against the Owls this weekend?
They're okay in close games. Again, there's so many.
3-6 in
Yeah,
one score games. Yeah.
that's the one thing that jumps out. They've played half their schedule have been one possession games. I mean, I guess if you're the numerologist there. If you had a longer schedule, you'd eventually get more. But to me, that's what jumps out. And they beat Tulane. And I forget who it was. I don't think it was you, because I don't want to be talking behind your back in front of your face. But I said they beat Tulane. Maybe it was Nate. I'm always quick to shove Nate under the bus there.
We kind of look the same, so.
Yeah, exactly. They beat Tulane, and somebody said, well, that was earlier in the season. They beat the team that is the best Group of 5 team, maybe picking nits, but that's another show and another podcast. Tulane's the best team in the Group of 5. It's not too crazy to say that. And Southern Miss beat them and at their place. They also, against 10-win teams, did you see this note from Brother Duggan, that as far as 10-win opponents, they played 3 10-win opponents. Some of that's, again, numbers guy. Yeah, you're going to play at least one, but they played 3, and that's third in the nation as far as 10-win teams. There aren't too many. In addition to Tulane, they played Troy in South Alabama inside conference play, and they did lose both of those games, but they're tested. I think for my long-winded diatribe here, to close it here, it feels like it looks like we have a little bit extra time. This is not a bad team. You look at 6-6, but I mean, Rice, I don't think is a bad team either on a 5-7 ledger, but this is a really salty Southern Miss team. And you're going to have to play a really good game. And can a true freshman quarterback do that? And can the Owls get something going on the ground game? And of course, not giving up a bushel of turnovers. That would help as well, like I mentioned earlier. So yeah, I might think of another one, but that's where my head's at. My big cranium's at now.
Well, you jumped on the good teams they played. I wanted to bring up Georgia State. And I wanted to bring up Georgia State because I think, man, the parallels between Rice and Southern Miss are spooky at points this season. And Georgia State, they finished 4-8. They were not a good football team this year by any measure. And Georgia State came into Hattiesburg and blasted Southern Miss 42-14 in a game that, talking with some Southern Miss folks, this is the Charlotte comp for Rice. So both teams had a game this season where just like, man, it didn't work. The defense that was supposed to be good was not good, and the offense did not show up. So I think that your point in this kind of points to just so much like, who knows, man? Like this game, and these teams are both teams where at the high point, Rice is, hanging with and, almost beat, some high caliber teams. You have the win over UAB, which, man, I don't care. That's a good program to have a win over. And then, Southern Miss hanging on and beating Tulane early in the season, played some other teams close, just like Rice did with some of their losses. You look at North Texas, you look at Houston. These are both teams that have been on the wrong side of, man, we almost, and have had a couple good wins sprinkled in there. So it's a good mix. And I think it just goes to show of you are truly meeting someone that's on your talent level, your resume level. And at that point, there's really not a excuse. You got to show up and you got to play the game. So I think it's going to be a good one. I'm hopeful it's going to be a good one. It's got a 4:45 p.m. kick this coming Saturday on ESPN. I almost said proper. I was corrected. ESPN Linear. And if for anybody that's listening, watching this under 25, that means it's actually on TV on your cable package, not your computer.
Our argument from a few weeks ago. It is a TV broadcast. So that's time.
Yeah, it'll be on your TV. I'm sure you can get it on your phone or whatever else. But I
was listening though, young Bartlett. They'll be listening. Come on, you know that people.
SinkMyGame.com.
Yes,
Is that good? It's my favorite, man. I don't know I should know this. Who is calling the game on ESPN? Do we know? Is it out?
I have that. It's in Mr. Pool's notes here. I could pull that up. I did.
Oh,
Did you have something else to get to? I can research that, or I can bring up something
I
else.
didn't. Mike Monaco, Matt Stinchcomb, and Alyssa Lang.
Mike Monaco, great broadcaster.
Yeah, man. Now I have to pick. I'm going to be there. So
Good. I thought
I'll just poke you.
Okay, I thought that's where we last left it, and you can be like Jerry Woodley was. We were in Austin Monday night against the state school, and he was listening. He was listening to that. Well, I know you were too. That was a wacky set of events, but I can't wait. I love December football. It brings back the memories. If I can act like it's so long ago, but Owls, my first 3 years here, I got spoiled. They're in the middle stretch of what was their best stretch in school history. And it's human nature. I probably took it for granted back then, but going back to another bowl, this conversation has helped even more get really, really fired up for it. So many similarities between the teams, but at the same time, it's going to feel like a bowl game. That's a conference game at the same time. I can't wait. We'll see over there. Are you going up Friday? Or
we'll see. I got to nail all my travel plans down. The
All right,
important thing is I will be there in Mobile.
my point being is we might have a steak dinner with your name on it if you are coming. If that's any incentive, I've been requested of my job on the road trips. A little behind the scenes is
food.
Well, among other things, not only my own consumption but others, seeing who wants to come to our good old family dinner, so to speak. And we love the Southern Miss guys behind the scenes. And so it's your on-air preview celebration and a pre-victory, maybe steak. So
I'll claim it. Why not? This is why we love JP, folks. Always here to my holiday love language is food. Let's be real. We're in the holidays now, and I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be doing this with you. I guess this is officially our last one of this year, which is
there ain't no more, Matthew.
Bittersweet. This is true. No games are gonna pop up after this one, but it's been fun. I love doing this with you. It's always a good time. I feel like I get smarter talking about the upcoming opponent, so at least I know what I'm doing when I show up to, I guess, scribe or whatever it is we're doing down there in Alabama this coming weekend. So it's fun. We will have to catch you on the broadcast. We told folks how to do that. You should listen to JP. He's great, and we'll have you covered on the Roost with everything going on, from game reactions to live notes to who knows it. We got one more, so we're going to take advantage of this.
Yeah, just
what do we need?
Yeah, one final word for those that somehow don't know, and we've got some folks still hanging on. Matthew will not tell folks this, but I say it wherever I can. He is the guy to come to. The years I've been doing this, nobody covers the Owls like Brother Bartlett did. I count you as a friend, sir, not just a colleague of sorts, and it's been a blast doing this with you. And see you perhaps over a nice bone-in ribeye over in Mobile. We'll see.
I'll allow it. Thank you, JP. Thank you, everybody who listened and stuck around with us and enjoyed us talking a little bit of food, a little bit of football, a little bit of holidays, a little bit of everything this year. So I guess we will pick this back up. We will see you on this show maybe what 9 months, something from now, maybe next September we'll sync up. But until then, go find JP on the radio. Go find me on the website. Run into us anywhere. You're welcome to buy us food. We'll take it. But until then, we will sign out. Take care, y'all, and Rice Fight
never dies.